Okay, so this week we're talking about agency leadership and CEOs. Why are we talking about agency CEOs?
Because in the last week, 4 of the leading agency CEOs in the UK have departed.
We have indeed. So another example maybe of media change, we've talked a lot about that. In fact, this time last year, in October 2016, we did a media snack, I think, and we put out a blog post as well, predicting some significant changing of the guard, I think we called it, of agency leadership, as part of just general significant change in the industry. And actually in the 12 months since then, it's been amazing actually how many big names have moved on when the previous 5 years there was very little change in agency leadership at all. So we thought we'd dig into that from a research perspective. So what we've looked at is we've looked at the top 20 agencies in London and New York. Yeah. We've looked at the CEOs, current CEOs and previous CEOs, just to kind of map the tenure and change across those as an indicator perhaps of changing leadership.
And we've got some really kind of surprising results. If you look at the churn, so of these kind of 20 agencies in the US, 70% of them have seen a change in leadership in the US, right? Yeah. And in the UK, that figure is nearly 60%. Yeah. And that churn, if you look at the same period of time, perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, is getting faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you look at tenure, so the amount of time that these leaders have been in the hot seat, in the US it's nearly 5 years, which is a pretty good run. But in the UK it's just over 3. Yeah.
And the tenure's shortening as well, so we map it against kind of the previous period, the tenure's shrinking. So we can see there's been lots of change. Yeah. There will probably continue to be more. We're anticipating some more big names being moved or leaving agencies. Why is it? Is it something weird at the time of year, some conspiracy, they're all leaving and going to set up another agency?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. But I mean, I think it's interesting that they are leaving going into the kind of the fourth quarter of the year.
It's a good time of year to change.
If there is ever a good time of year to change the leadership, then perhaps October is it, right? So, the year is almost done. They'll be looking to plan for the following year. And this will be the planning cycle, this will be the planning period. So as long as you can get a successor in now that can influence strategy for next year, perhaps it mitigates or reduces the damage of having your kind of senior leader kind of come out of the business.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
But why are so many leaders leaving now?
Yeah.
Are there kind of some reasons for that?
Well, we can only speculate, but we do know it's an incredibly tough job. I mean, having spoken to lots of these CEOs and not so many other agency CEOs, it's really tough, particularly to run a local market. It's incredibly tough in a major agency. One of the biggest things that they've had to contend with is a churn of general talent themselves. So we talk sometimes about the thin middle in agencies. The leadership, there's quite good headcount in terms of very senior and experienced leadership. The middle has been eaten away a little bit because where agencies have lost talent, it's been in that middle tier of kind of middle levels of experience, and leaving to tech companies, on the ad vendor side, to consultancies. That's been a real challenge for CEOs. They're generally quite kind of wide at the bottom, if that's a phrase, to agencies. The other thing is, there's general circling of kind of questions and distrust generally about media agencies. So being a CEO, you take that quite personally, and that can have a bit of a destabilizing effect, I'm assuming, on morale. And
it must be exhausting.
Challenge.
I mean, trying to motivate and keep your team inspired to do the right kind of work, given the climate of distrust and conversation that's gone around the media agencies must be really exhausting and challenging for them.
Yeah. So that's something you've got to kind of overcome with, and that in itself. And then we know that agencies are highly competitive. I mean, it's a strange market because there's too much supply and too little demand really to sustain the amount of media agencies that there is, and they're all fighting for the same pitches all the time. And the pitch market this year in 2017 has been relatively light, as we discussed in an episode or two back. And winning pitches, winning that organic growth, that incremental growth for an agency CEO is what it's all about. And so, which is why whenever we speak to an agency CEO, all they want to know about is what pitches, how do we win it, how do we get in there, and it becomes like crack for them. It's the only indicator of success really that they've got to their reporting line, to their holding company, to their global management.
You can see how the last 18 months have been kind of really challenging for them. Absolutely.
So I think all of those combined, it's kind of hard to see like the silver lining of those jobs. Incredibly pressured, and more so. And these are things which probably need wholesale change. You'd imagine that there's a rethinking of how agencies are going to operate. There's a changing brief from advertisers, and maybe this is the time to kind of bring through new leadership.
And I think that's the positive from all of this. So as the industry goes through this kind of period of transformation and change, from the agency side, it starts at the very top. So the establishment of different principles, set of values, a way of working, and having some kind of fresh thinking, fresh leadership, fresh inspired kind of championing of the media cause at the very top, I think can be a really good thing. So perhaps we'll look back on this period and see that as a real kind of milestone in the turning fortunes of the media agencies.
Yeah, I think so. There will be more. I don't think this is the end of it. I think we can expect some, probably all agencies to make some sort of change, whether it's CEO or other kind of leadership or restructures. There'll be a lot more of that in the months to come. One of the interesting stats that we came across this week through our research was that actually the promoting of a CEO, in an agency is becoming less likely. So what we mean by that is right now, 60 to 70% of CEOs, agency CEOs, have been promoted from within, but that's declining on a prior period. And then, you look at, so some big names coming from outside. Tim Castry at Wavemaker, for example, not promoted from within. We'll probably see. Well, let's see. But we'd expect more CEOs to come, maybe from other places across the industry.
And that's going to be what's fascinating now, because all of these roles need to be filled, right? You'd assume that the holding groups and the big CEOs have got a perspective on how they're going to fill that, and the profile of person that is going to lead their agencies moving forward. And so identifying where they come from and what their approach is going to be, I think is going to be really fascinating.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, good week for
the UK media agencies.
I'm surprised that you said that.
Yes, given what we just said. We've talked a little bit about how important new business pitching is.
Yes.
And this year, how quiet the new business pitching market is. Well, in the last 5 days, two of the UK's largest advertisers,
so Sky and the government,
have put their media accounts up for review. That's a combined total of £500 million worth of media will be in play early part of next year. Yeah.
So these new agency CEOs can have a bit of a run up, and they've got something to play for next year.
And it's been a bad week for?
Sadly, a bad week for the ANA. So the US trade body, Association of National Advertisers, I can normally say that quite well, in the last month or so have actually launched the first advertising campaign that they'd ever run in their history, being an ad trade body, which everyone was really excited about and kind of good for them, until somebody noticed that an ad was being displayed, a digital ad was being displayed on Breitbart News, and called them out on Twitter, and they've subsequently had to go back and investigate through their agency, and stuff's been taken down and corrected. And what the ANA said is it was an unintentional result of a programmatic buy, and it's been removed. Now, just given the amount of effort and attention that the ANA have driven through, the crappy media supply chain, the problems with programmatic, of keeping control of your ad placement and all of this kind of stuff, it was sad to see, but it just goes to show, it's out of control,
and it can affect anybody.
Yeah, and anybody can be affected by this. So that was a kind of a bad week, and hopefully it encourages us all to do more, I think, to get rid of all this kind of stuff. Question of the week: where will the future CEOs of media agencies come from?
Are they going to be found internally or externally or whatever?
Great. Anyway, that's your media snack for this week. Thank you very much for watching.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Entering. Have you
Yeah.
got back to
I know, but I did
what
that
was,
earlier,
what
didn't
was
I?
the opposite of that?
Like that.
Oh, okay, that's
Like
it.
that.
Right.